Thank you, Rusty. First of all, I'd like to thank Shell for inviting us out here. My name is Mark Gessler. I'm president of the Historic Vehicle Association, and our objective is to share America's automotive history with the American people. It's that simple. If you think about our architectural history, we have 80,000 buildings on the National Register of Historic Places, 80,000. Aviation is celebrated at its highest level in this nation through the National Air and Space Museum, which I'm sure that most of you have all been to. It happens to be the most visited museum on the planet. But somehow, somewhere along the way, the automobile was lost. If you look at the federal government, the number of people that wake up every day that are focused on our America's automotive heritage is one. Now, he's a really nice guy. His name's Roger White, and he's at the Smithsonian. But that's one person. So the HVA, in fact, was put together to actually address this problem and try to make the impact that we want to share this with America's people for not just now, but for future generations, some of the great stories that you're going to hear here today. 2 years ago, we sat down with the Department of Interior, which manages heritage, and the Library of Congress, and established the National Historic Vehicle Register as a project that uses the same kinds of criteria that is used for our built environment and for aviation to celebrate heritage. Its association with an important event in American history. Its association with important people in American history. Its design or construction value. Its information value, such as being an unrestored example or being a well-preserved example. And in all those cases, the Cobra that is here with us today, the Shelby Daytona Coupe, is just that. Well, back in 1963, 52 years ago, Pete Brock was defying aerodynamic theory at the time. And in fact, as I understood it from the many stories that we've had, Carroll Shelby actually brought in one of the top aerodynamicists at the time. And he sat down and he looked at Pete's drawings and said, this isn't going to work. It's just absolutely not going to work. So with that, 2 years later, America took the World Manufacturers Championship for Shelby, and in fact, in these cars that defied aerodynamic theory at the time. In fact, later in 1965, we have Craig Breedlove here, who went out on the salt flats and established 23 international and national land speed records with this very same car. So I'm going to invite now Pete up to tell us a little bit about the design, and then for Craig to come up and tell us a little bit about the salt flats at that time. So Pete, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. You have to understand that when the idea for this car first came out in 1963, the ideal shape for an automobile was considered very much like a teardrop. So the idea that I'd learned from some German aerodynamic studies had actually been done clear back in 1934 and had never been used on an automobile. It was a wild guess to try to do something with a very flat roofline and a chopped off tail. But the car was considered so ugly at that time that we had a hard time convincing anybody to build it, including all the guys in the shop. So through a lot of pressure, we finally got in, but time constraints were such to get to the first race at Daytona. From the first sketch to the time we ran it at Daytona, we built the entire car in 90 days. So that gives you an idea how quick it was. So there was no time to change or fix anything. The car pretty much worked very, very good the first time we took it out to the track. Our test driver, Ken Miles, broke the lap record by 3.5 seconds, and at that point, everybody's opinion of the ideal with a flat roof and a chopped off tail suddenly evaporated, and it was considered a pretty good design. So the interesting thing about it is that this whole idea now of a flat roof and a chopped off tail, you can go out and look at any production car that's out on the road today. They all pretty much look like the same concept. But at that time, it was considered pretty radical. So this car really changed people's perceptions of what automotive aerodynamics should be. So okay, Craig, I want you to come up and tell us a little bit about your run in the car at Bonneville. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Peter. We were at Bonneville competing for the unlimited world speed record with Art Arfons. We had established a record of 555, which raised his 534 record up to that. And then he came back with a record of 576 miles an hour. And I was notified of that in New York while I was doing the press tour after the 555 record. and was notified that my record was no longer available, and Bob Lane at Goodyear wanted to know if I would go back, and I said, well, you know, we designed the car for 600, so I'd like to make a crack at it, and he agreed to pay for it. So off we went back to Bonneville, and came back with 2 runs with the Spirit of America Sonic one at 594 miles an hour, and the next run was 608.211, which gave us the 600.601 by the skin of our teeth. And so Goodyear was quite interested in saving that record, and we knew that Art would come back and make a try at it. The way the salt flats were set up is you reserve the salt for a certain given period of time, and we had about 3 days left on our term on the salt, and then we knew Art would be back, and we didn't want to give it up, and so we wanted to hold the record as long as possible. And so Lane got the idea to call Shelby and see if he had a car available that we could take out there to break the endurance records on the 10-mile circle. And this car showed up on the back of an El Camino pickup truck with one of Shelby's mechanics, Tom, who immediately came along and took all the mirrors off of it and Peter's prize spoiler back here, and got it all cleaned up for top speed. And so the first guy to drive it was Bobby Tatro, who had driven the Wingfoot Express. And when Bobby got in it, he went right down the salt flats and spun it out in the lights. So then he gathered it up, got to the other end, made a return run, and again spun out in the lights. So when the car finally got back to the pit area, they wanted me to take a ride in it, and I'm looking at this thing going, wow, well, this guy's a sprint car driver and he can't hang on to it. So I hopped in it, and with a lot of jurisprudence, feathered the throttle and took it real easy and made 2 passes at 168 with it, but it was really, really dicey. Brought it back in, and I told Tom, hey, this thing is really squirrely. I mean, it's right on the edge, and I don't know if we can run it or not. So he said, well, let me try it out. So the mechanic hops in the car, goes down, goes through 3 gears, and pulls out of the racetrack and comes back, and he says, we got to put the spoiler back on this thing. So after having the experience, I'm looking at the spoiler, which is this small aluminum attachment, and I'm going, boy, that's not going to fix the evil in this car. And anyway, Tom got it on, pop riveted it back, and said, okay, Craig, take it down again. So next run, I think around it's been 50 years, 178 or something like that, considerably better, and the car was very stable. And so the following day we started attacking the records, and we were running 1 full tank of gas. The car has 35-gallon capacity, so that's about an hour and a half's run, and then we would change drivers. And it would have gone a lot faster, but we had to hand pump the gasoline out of a 55-gallon barrel with a barrel pump. And so in spite of all of the handicaps and the fact that we were just really wanted to consume time to hold on to the salts, this baby managed to set 23 international speed records, and it would have easily gone the 24 hours, but we couldn't, we didn't have lights out there at night or anything. So anyway, we stopped at 12 hours, and that's, you know, pretty much the story of the run. And actually, it's survived a lot longer than some of my other records. So we're really proud of it, and it's great to see it again. I saw it for my first time in a long time at the Simeon Foundation, where Fred has it at the museum there. And so anyway, we're really proud of it, and it's great to see it again. And she's in real good shape. Just got back from Goodwood Speed Festival in Europe. And so that's pretty much the story, and I'll get out of your hair now. Give it back to Rusty. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And Shell's been with Craig a long time. 'Cause back when he was out there in the flats running and breaking those records, we were with him back then. And appreciate all you guys coming out today. Thank you again for making this happen today. Really appreciate it.